You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet. Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
All right, Miami! Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. Hey, when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. 'Cause we're the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins.
Good afternoon, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, as I have a very special guest today, someone you all know very well, former Miami Dolphins running back Ricky Williams, who has some exciting news in that his Highsman brand is launching an online marketplace at the website, which I will put up here on the screen, gethighsman.com, and it will feature a product lineup of pre-rolls, disposable vapes, edibles, and game time strains. Ricky, how you doing? And congratulations on this new marketplace.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's exciting. But I have to comment. Every time I come on in that intro, it gets me hype. I tell people, it's like, for me, being a retired football player, football is constantly running in the back of my mind, and so I don't really ever have an off season. When I'm walking through the living room, right, the couches are linebackers, and I'm trying to get by, and so everything I view is through the lens of football, and it's really helped me a lot in business because it's such a competitive market, any industry right now. We have inflation and a lot of difficult things out there where people don't have a lot of extra money to buy things, and so especially we sell goods, we sell products, and so it's hard, and we come into work and the guys start complaining. And honestly, I turn into Coach Sabin, right? Or I turn into one of the coaches,
Yeah.
Quit your bitching, and I give them, right? And I even say, we got to review the film. We got to learn what we have to do. And I said, tough, you never played against the Steelers defense or the Patriots defense, you see them coming up on the calendar and you just got to get ready for it and you got to do your best. And so, they laugh when I turn into Coach Rick. But it's been great. It's been great taking everything I've learned on the field and using it to start businesses that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, and this Highsman brand is growing rapidly, which I'm sure you're very happy about. And with this new online store, is this the next step in sort of growing the business to be able to send stuff straight to, right to the consumer itself off the website and not having to go through like stores and stuff? Is this like the next sort of step in growing the brand?
It is. It is. When we first got in, like I mentioned earlier, we knew it was going to be difficult, one, because cannabis is still federally illegal. There's states that allow recreation and medical usage. But the thing that all of us are fighting is the stigma. And I think because the nature of my story, I got in a whole bunch of trouble down in Miami for failing drug tests. And the world has changed so much in the last 20 years where people are really starting to open their minds and realize that I wasn't doing anything wrong, And what motivates me most about being in this space is there's so many people that have been anti-cannabis who are suffering, And the worst part about it is they're not getting the help they need and they're not feeling better. So being able to make easier for people to access where they don't go to a dispensary, they don't have to go through all these things, I'm excited about, I'm extremely excited about. And I also feel good because, it's my name on the brand, but it's not just my name, it's my story, and whether people see me and they're like, wow, you were such a rough football player, but you look so good and you're able to move so well. And it's because I've been able to take care of myself. And I think passing this story along of someone who did something brutal and is still thriving, right, we can all have that. Life is tough, and our ability to watch the film, learn from our mistakes, and be ready for the next opponent. Right, we all need some of that.
Absolutely. And you sort of mentioned, with laws and stuff, how close do you think we are to federal cannabis reform in this country? Because, the marketplace these days, compared to where it was just, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, seems to be expanding and growing. And I've seen, as have you, minds change on this issue at a rapid rate, considering where we were in 2004 when you had your whole situation to now 20 years later where we are. Just think where we're going to be another 5, 10 years, 15. I mean, there has to be a day soon, I would think, where there's going to be federal cannabis reform, wouldn't you?
Of course, it's coming, but it's politics.
Change is slow. Change is slow sometimes.
And if you think about the people, the majority of the people who vote are people who are much older, who are not as open-minded and receptive and haven't been as present for this revolution around cannabis that's been occurring in the past 10 years. So there's this gradual increase of the median voting age that as that moves up, people like me who are like, what's the big deal? Then it's a no-brainer. The interesting thing is, right now in especially our national political, story narrative right now is there's so many question marks. And the optimistic people in the industry are saying, maybe Biden will reschedule cannabis to make a big push before the election. Big question marks, but I think we can say in about 5 years we should all be ready for legalization. The dominoes are falling. More states are coming on board. More states are coming on board, and more people are advocating, and it's just a shift. So I say in 5 years we should have federal legalization.
Yeah. Now let's talk about a few of the things that you're going to be selling on your store, because one thing you did with the marketing gets an A+. You have marketed some of these products in your former team's colors, like the Miami Dolphins and the University of Texas. So if you're interested in some products that come in packaging, like the University of Texas colors with the burnt orange, here are your THC.
Those are gummies. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the gummies, which word slipped my mind for a second. Sorry. And also you can get stuff in packaging like the Miami Dolphins colors here, which I have to point out that down here at the bottom where it says Barry Csonka, awesome marketing. Barry Csonka is great. Love Barry Csonka. I love that. Here's one too, where you got Run Ricky Run down here. So for people who might not understand THCP and some of the terminology on this branding, why don't you explain to them what they can find at gethighsman.com?
Yeah, so there's something 2018 is called the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill was passed, and it was really pushed by the popularity of hemp. And even the government recognized that if cannabis is grown and the THC or the Delta-9 THC, which is the psychoactive chemical in the plant, is below 0.03% or 0.3%, that it's not going to quote unquote get people high. And so they allowed people to produce products that have less than 3% Delta-9 THC. And, in this market, there's so many brilliant people trying to find loopholes, right? Is they found a precursor to Delta-9 THC, which is, they call it Delta-8. But once Delta-8 is in the body and interacts with the body, it becomes Delta-9 THC. So it's a loophole that allows people in the legal market to get access to the relief and the medicine that THC Delta-9 offers, but doing it through a legal form factor.
Awesome. Yep. And everyone, head over to the website, gethighsman.com, check out all the stuff there, and support Ricky here and his brand, which is just fantastic. Now, I want to ask you some questions here about your past and about your football days, but I want to ask you one thing. You were also drafted in the 8th round in 1995 by the Philadelphia Phillies. You're also and you played Class A ball for them. Was that just as much a passion for you as playing football, baseball? And then you moved around to Montreal and the Rangers. What was it like playing Class A ball there for a few years? And why did you pick football over Major League Baseball at one point?
Oh, great question. So, I grew up in San Diego, and I was a huge Tony Gwynn fan growing up. I was 7 years old listening to the Padres on the radio. So I was all in. Okay. That's all in.
Radio days. Yep.
Yeah. When I was 7, I thought for sure I was going to be the next great baseball player, the next great outfielder. And so as I went through life, started playing T-ball, I started playing Little League way before I started playing football. because, again, that was my passion. Got into middle school, coach talked me into playing some football. And I was just really good at football, And so when I got to my junior year in high school and I was being recruited by pretty much every college in the country, I was also being recruited by pretty much every team in Major League Baseball. And I was very clear to all the baseball teams. I said, I'm playing college football. Okay. I'm playing baseball, but I'm playing college football. And I was clear at all the football teams. I'm playing professional baseball. Okay. So both sides knew what the deal was. Texas, I still had all the scholarships. Texas offered me the scholarship, and the Phillies drafted me in the 8th round. And it was cool because the way that baseball set up, or just the way the NCAA was set up, is if you're being paid to play one sport, meaning you're a professional athlete in one sport, you cannot be an amateur athlete. You can't receive a scholarship. But the Major League Baseball, when they draft kids, part of the draft system is that they pay for their education. So the Phillies paid for my education to go to Texas, where I won the Heisman Trophy and started on the football team. So it's a cool story. But the coolest part was, and this answers, what was it like? Humbling, okay? Humbling, right? Going from one of the number one schools in NCAA football history, we were treated like gods almost, to minor league baseball, where we are not treated like gods at all.
Or the back of the bus driving around,
It's back of the bus playing spades. And then the worst part was the living situation. We had to share like a Days Inn hotel room, and we're only in the room for like 2 hours because we get to the city at like 11 o'clock in the morning, 12. We go over to the baseball for Diamond for BP and warm up at like 3. The game is over at like 10:30, right? And then we have the same thing the next day. So, but it was humbling. It was humbling, and I would come back in wonderful shape for the football season. So it worked out. It worked out great for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you said, too, coming out of high school, all the schools were recruiting you. You went to the University of Texas. If it wasn't Texas, was there a second school that's like it's between Texas and what was that other, or was it always them right off the bat? But was there a second school that sort of piqued your interest a little bit ago? I got to consider them, too. Because when you have all those offers coming in, I'm guessing there's got to be more than one that sort of piqued your interest.
Yeah, so interesting story. So my top 4 going into recruiting, number 1 on my list was the University of Stanford University. So Stanford was first. Stanford was first. USC and Texas USC, Texas, and Notre Dame were like 1, 2, and 3. Wow. And then a distant kind of 5th was University of Colorado. And there are some other stragglers, San Diego State, because I grew up in San Diego. And so I took my recruiting trip to the USC. Well, first of all, Stanford was off the list because halfway through recruiting season, Coach Bill Walsh retired. The main reason Stanford was number 1 on the list is I wanted to be a fullback in the West Coast offense. I wanted to play fullback at Stanford. But when Walsh retired, Stanford came off my list, and it was Notre Dame, USC, and Texas. And I took my recruiting trip to USC on December 14th of 1994. And then I took my trip to Texas 2 days later. So I had Texas and USC literally back-to-back trips. So it was easy to compare the two. And after going to Texas, I knew this is a place I need to be. So I crossed USC off the list, and it was December, and I wasn't going to South Bend. So that one was easy to cross off. That one was easy to cross off the list too.
When you're talking about weather, South Bend's a little bit of an outlier there compared to the other 3, just in terms of weather. Like it's snow out there. Got to avoid that, I'm sure.
But it's Notre Dame, though. But it was Notre Dame.
It is Notre Dame.
Yes.
And was that still with Lou Holtz still there?
Yep, it was his last year.
Yeah, he was still there in 94. Oh, that would have been kind of cool. Because Lou's a great motivational speaker. He gives those motivational speeches. That probably would have been a lot of fun.
But one more piece here. One of the reasons Texas was on the list is because we played Notre Dame my first 2 years, so I got to have the experience of playing in front of Touchdown Jesus. Yeah, they whooped us bad, but still, it's good experience.
Yes. You talk about college, and now, like in the 90s, your last 2 years of college, you were, this is pre-social media. You were on all the covers of the magazines. You were on ESPN, Heisman Trophy your final season. If there was NIL then, how much you would have been the king of NIL for that 2-year span. Nowadays, all of these players, and God bless them, because make money off your name, image, and stuff. I understand it, but what do you think your life would have been back then? Would you have been prepared for that, you think, to see that type of money as a college student? Or how do you think you would have handled that back then?
So I got a decent. It wasn't what these kids are making now, but I got a 6-figure signing bonus from the Phillies. And so I had more than my teammates. I had a little bit of experience with a little bit of money. But, I think the major difference is I'm not sure I would have gone into the NFL had I been at Texas for 2 years receiving that kind of NIL money.
Yeah.
Because the beauty of it is it gives college athletes more options of what to do after college. Because the old model, right, is work on nothing until you get your big break, and then you're kind of enslaved to the NFL to do it. But now, I just think of it allows athletes to maximize the opportunities that being at a major university offers them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is life-changing.
And it gives them leverage. The old school coaches could treat players any way they wanted, and the players couldn't leave, and the players couldn't do anything. Now a player can enter the transfer portal, and they can get paid. So I'm sure the coaches, I hear them, are lamenting and complaining about it, but I think it's great for these athletes. They have more leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. And the old model wasn't right. The new model, I know they might put some, changes to it, which I understand, but it needs to be closer to what it is now to have the players get a little something or get anything, because in the past, it just kind of wasn't fair. It's like you're signing up for the Army. You signed here, you really can't leave unless you want to, sit out a year and stuff. So I think the new NIL rules, it probably needs a little bit of tweaking and stuff, but it's far better than what players in the past have. And you were very lucky having money because you were picked in the Major League Baseball draft. Your first 2 years in Miami, something we didn't talk about last time I had you on, you came onto the scene in Miami and had 2 amazing years. I mean, you ran for like 1,800 yards plus and 16 touchdowns. I think he averaged like well over 100 yards a game. Your second year, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. But both years you carried the ball a lot. Like you carried it like just under 400 times in both years. I looked online last night as I was preparing. Those 2 years are ranked 8th and 15th still all time in most carries in a season, which is a lot. Did the workload over that time sort of change your mindset around the sport of football? Did you talk to Coach Wannstedt, Coach Norv Turner about it, saying, look, it's a lot of work. I don't mind it, but this is going to affect you down the road for sure. That's a lot of carries in a rough sport, to say the least.
Yeah. So 2 things. One, that part of the conversation is one of the things that led to my eventual retirement the following year, when nothing was done to limit. And it's not the amount of carries. It's not the quantity. It's the quality of carries. Okay. Yeah. So 2002, I led the NFL in carries, and I averaged, I think, 4.7 yards a carry. So almost 5 yards a carry. 2003, I had more carries and over about 500 yards less. So my average per carry that second year, I think, was under 4. I think it went in 3.5. 3.8.
It was, yep.
Yeah.
3.5, you're right. I have it right here.
3.5, yeah. And so the quality of the carries, right? I was taking much more of a pounding in 2003 because we had less productivity from our passing game. And so it wasn't the quantity, it was the quality of the carries. And if I would have had 4.7 yard average in 2003, I would have had over 2,000 yards rushing, and I'd be in the Hall of Fame. So football is the ultimate team sport. And I tell young kids, right, it's more important that you go to a place where you can be successful than you get paid. Because if you go to a place where you can be successful, you're going to get paid. If you go to a place where you're not successful and you get paid up front, chances are you're not going to get to that second contract in a way that feels good to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you were away for a bit and you came back and you played for Nick Sabin, who you mentioned at the top of the show. Nick Sabin just retired, arguably the best college football coach maybe ever, has won a ton. What was it like playing for Nick? There's always a lot of stories about Nick from some of the players on that time. What was your relationship with him? How did you like him? And what was it like playing with Nick?
I only got to play. I say it like this: I only got to play for him for a year, and he was by far my favorite coach ever.
Yeah,
you know, and we all have different tastes in what we're looking for in a good coach. But for me, it's a coach that knows the game and shoots you straight. Meaning, I knew exactly what was expected from me on a daily basis, and so all I had to do was hit the mark. Was just focus on delivering. And so it made my job really easy. And Nick appreciates good football players, period. He's able to kind of see through all the crap and really appreciate good football players. So he made me a better football player that year. And if you look at my numbers, they were pretty damn good considering I had been away from football for a year.
Yeah, I think you're here. I got him right here. 4.4 yards a carry, 6 touchdowns. 12 games, 743 yards. Not a bad year, to say the least right there. That was a very productive season in 05 for you. A couple questions here right before we wrap up about stuff non-football related. Now, I love the show Big Brother. And when I saw you were going to be on Celebrity Big Brother, that was probably like 5 years ago or so, I was like, this is going to be great. Ricky's on Celebrity Big Brother. Were you a fan of the show heading in? Did you know much about it heading in, or did you sort of pick it up on the fly or sort of learn about it when you knew you were going to be on the show?
Yeah, I was on the fly. So I had seen, before I got the phone call inviting me to interview for the show, I had seen one episode. Yeah, I'd seen a segment of one episode. and in that one segment, just from that one segment, I remember telling myself, I could never do that. I could never do that. Like the scheming and I was like, I could never do that.
The backstabbing, the whispering.
Exactly. And then I got the call, and I was going to turn it down, but my daughter's a big fan, and so she convinced me to at least have the interview. And they liked me, and so they invited me on. And so when they first invite you on, they put you they lock you in a hotel room for 3 days where you don't get to see anyone. That was the hardest part. I was locked in a hotel room for 3 days, and they give you all the DVDs of the past couple of seasons. So I got a chance to kind of catch up and get a sense of how the game works.
Mm-hmm.
And, my strategy was to make everyone like me, because I kind of, it's easy for me amongst people, and not especially other famous people, to kind of like slide under the radar. I'm the shy, quiet one in the corner. And so that's how everyone kind of assumed I was. But so it allowed me to share secrets with everyone, and I would share just enough so they would trust me, but I wouldn't give them the good stuff. And so everyone thought I was on their team, and at the very end, and it's funny, I got to the final, but at the very end I got 0 votes. And the reason I got 0 votes is because everyone was so shocked that I was the one pulling all the strings underneath. And they were so pissed off that they just all voted for Tamar, because in that month, Tamar, who won that season, she cussed everybody in the house out at least 3 times, and they still all voted for her. I was like, wow, this is crazy. But yeah,
which is kind of crazy because you're the one sitting there playing the game, so to speak, making moves. Nobody knows it's you. This guy's gone really because I put something in somebody's head, and you played the game the best. But even though she's yelling at people, screaming at people, they maybe felt more connected to her in some way. Like, I knew who she's been the whole time. Who knew Ricky was out there planting my exit for weeks? That's what it's all. That's why I don't like how they picked the winner, because you played the game and should have won. She was just good, but I mean, you played the game.
It was a fun experience, though, and Tamar was my favorite person by far in the house. There was one point. I don't know Tom Green. That was my arch enemy. So Tom had an opportunity where he won, and he had to kick me out, and he actually gave me the veto. I was his main opponent. If he got rid of me, no one was going to touch him. But he didn't have faith in himself, and he thought he needed me, and he thought I would help him if he saved me. He was wrong. So, that was my shining moment. I call it the Jedi mind trick, where I was sitting in the chair and he had me, and he gave me the veto, and I was like, no way.
Here's the other thing too about that show, which I saw. I would like to know your perspective. You're on that show. Some people are there, I think, just to be seen and just to be on TV. You were there to win it. I saw your competitive side come out. Lolo Jones, same way. Super athlete.
Yes.
Her competitive side was there. Exactly. Competitive to the nth degree was there to win it. Some of the others, I felt, look, I'll be here for a week or two. I'll be on CBS for like an hour a night, and then I'm fine to go. Did you see that side of us where some people were there to win and some people were there just to be on? I just want to be on TV for like a week.
Yeah. So, I will say there were the people, and you could tell in the very beginning that they just wanted to be on there. But I think there's something like deeply psychological inside of us is no one wants to get kicked out of the group. So some of the people might have come in to that, but when it really came down to it, they wanted to stay. It's just that feeling of being kicked out. It's like nobody wants that.
Yeah. And the other show, I guess you did, which I didn't remember, so I want to actually go back and watch it. You were on the new Celebrity Apprentice, not with Trump, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. What was that experience like compared to Big Brother?
So I liked Big Brother a lot more because it was more real and it was more intense. Celebrity Apprentice is real. Like they don't, it's not scripted, it's real. But when we do like the interviews, they're like throwing kind of lines and they're kind of tweaking it. And I'm a big fan of Arnold, the actor, not a huge fan of Arnold, the person, and I think I was before this, but they say never meet your heroes. And I think in Big Brother, it's only you on your own and you have to interact with the other people you live with. I think on that one, it's tough because it's kind of like a coach, someone watching from the outside that can tell you what to do. I didn't love that part, but it was a great experience. I learned so much about publicity because basically Celebrity Apprentices were doing publicity stunts, doing something to get the word out. And it's really helped me in running my own businesses of thinking, how do I want to brand this? What kind of events do we want to do? And it's easy in real life because in the show, you got like 24 hours to put together this whole event and everyone's running around. But in real life, you got a couple of weeks, you got lead time so you can do more things. But the reason I did it is because I knew I was going to get into entrepreneurship and I wanted some kind of real life experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it definitely served that purpose.
Yeah. And because I just remember on Big Brother, you had Ryan Lochte, Kato Kalin, Tom Green, Lolo Jones, who was maybe the most competitive person I've ever seen in my life. You had a lot of big personalities that season, and you got so far, and you should have won. You would have got my vote, Ricky. I'll tell you that right there.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So everyone, go to the website, gethighsman.com. There's a new online marketplace. As we said, we have he has Ricky pre-rolls, vapes, edibles, and stuff like that. Check it out, gethighsman.com. And for all things with the Highsman brand, go to the website, highsman.com. Ricky, appreciate every time you're on with us. Anytime you got something new to promote, let me know. We'll have you on to talk about it, and have a good one.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Ricky.
All right. You got it.